It's the Musers, the podcast, Cowboys edition. George Dunham and Bob Sturm. We are football friends, and we're doing something really special on the Cowboys podcast this week. As we get away from the now and reality, and we go back in time to 1975, the 75-76 season. It was January 18th, 1976, Super Bowl X, Cowboys and the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's been 30 years since the Cowboys have been to a Super Bowl. Been over 30 years now. It was Super Bowl 30. That was the last time they went to a Super Bowl. That was against the Steelers. The first time they played the Steelers in the Super Bowl was this 75 season that Bob has been going back and detailing the year leading up to the draft, the offseason, the preseason, into the regular season, the Hail Mary in Minnesota, the win in Los Angeles, and now the Super Bowl, which Bob had this great idea. Let's go back and watch it because the broadcast, the entire broadcast does exist, and we watched it this week on YouTube. This is probably what, Bob, the third or fourth time you've watched this?
Oh yeah. I love this game, and I love this period of time, and this is what's honestly so fun about living in this present day is that a lot of things have been preserved. And if you want to watch Super Bowl X, all you got to do is go to YouTube. They won't even charge you for this. I can't believe we live in a time where you can live a 50-year-old Super Bowl almost as it happened and just kind of enjoy it. And you get to do it for free because technology is pretty cool.
It is really cool. And it took me back, as I talked about last week. I remember vividly watching this Super Bowl. I was about to turn 11. I was 10 years old. And this was my first year. This was my sports awakening. I remember Super Bowl VI. I remember watching that. I remember being happy, and my entire family was happy because the Cowboys had finally won the championship. They were always next year's champions, and they'd finally won. This is, just a 4 years later, I guess. And I had really gotten into the team. I could name everybody on the team. I knew who the team was. And I remember watching this Super Bowl. I told you I watched the NFC Championship game at my grandparents' house in Gainesville, Texas. Well, now it's time to go back to Chicago, where I lived in exile, Bob, for 7 years as a Texan against my will. And then finally my dad got transferred back to Texas. And I remember watching this. We had a split-level house in Wheaton, and we watched it in my parents' bedroom because we only had one TV, and the den downstairs was too darn cold on January 18th. So we moved the TV setup, which was, I'm ashamed to say, it was black and white, Bob. We did not get our first color TV set until the fall of 1976.
You've always been blue collar job,
Well, we were, right in there with middle class America. That was
That's
just,
right.
That was just what you did. And, my dad made a Super Bowl chili. He did that every Super Bowl. And I just knew that this was going to end with the Cowboys with this crowning moment of being champions again, knocking off the Steelers, who I had already built up a hatred for somehow. And I just, I wasn't associated with North Texas yet, so I didn't know anything about Mean Joe Green outside of we would drive down 35 and go down, by Fouts Field. My dad would say, hey, that's where Mean Joe Green played, and it didn't mean anything to me at the time. But anyway, I just remember that day. The expectation was, this is going to be a great day. And for the first half, it was. For the second half, it wasn't. And to this day, I realize watching this, I will lead with this, Bob.
Yeah.
It is still my biggest sports disappointment, Super Bowl X.
Man.
Because Super Bowl 13, I was older, I knew of the agony of defeat. This was really my first time, because I don't remember Super Bowl V. This is my first time of, you're on the verge of, this is it. Your team is going to do this again. And what? Roger can't throw another Hail Mary pass. It's going to be completed. And I was devastated, just devastated.
There's something profound about that, because I think what's sort of neat as watching sports as a kid is that you do compare it to your childhood movies, like your childhood movies and TV shows. And in all your childhood movies and TV shows, it ends happily. Mm-hmm. They don't burden 5-year-olds with their hero dying at the end of the movie almost ever. Like they always figure it out. They're always happy and hugs and just cozy feelings at the end of our movies and our cartoons and our TV shows as kids. And then sports, you go over there and you're like, this is fun. Here are my heroes. This is so cool. And you are programmed to believe that there will always be a joyful conclusion. And so what you're describing is what we all figure out at some point, which is, oh my gosh, the heroes lose in the end? I don't like this. Walt Disney did a horrible job with this movie.
Right.
I want happy resolutions.
And that's funny you mentioned that, because the Cowboys were like a casted group of characters.
Right.
You had Captain America at quarterback, Roger Staubach, who we all thought
can't lose.
He can't lose. He'll find a way to win. Even on the Super Bowl 10 highlight reel that I've watched probably 500 times, with John Facenda saying, while Pittsburgh thought the game was over, Dallas didn't. And it's like, you're dang right we didn't think it was over. And, and you look over at the sideline, there's Tom Landry, a World War II hero, and the cast of characters on defense, Ed Too Tall Jones and Leroy Jordan and Harvey Martin. And we this is our group of characters. We don't lose. And if we do, it's every once in a while, but it's not very often. And it sure as heck is not going to be in the Super Bowl. We've got this thing figured out now. And I got to tell you, we always talk about the sports cry or the sports tears. I remember sitting on the edge of my parents' bed, because, you sat on the floor, you sat on the bed, and we were watching this. And I started crying. And I remember my dad saying, come on, it's just a game. You don't cry over a game. But man, in my heart, I hadn't experienced, the death of a family member just yet. It was like, I felt like something died that day. It was my sports dream that died, but it was devastating.
I can remember that very first time my dad tried to tell me it's just a game, and you push back and you're like, no, it's not. And honestly, the circle of life, you do the same thing with your boys. The first time they get heartbroken by a sports team, you try to tell them that it's fine, it's just a game, we'll be back, and then they push back, and you don't know what to say because they're really sad. And I've been on both sides of it, and I remember them both clearly, because that's the sort of thing a human doesn't forget. And I'm thrilled you watch this for us, for Football Friends, because I know it's not easy. I've got a couple games that if you twisted my arm, you could probably get me to relive them, but I'd rather just never revisit them until the day I die, because, and I was an adult when Super Bowl 32 happened, when John Elway went spinning through the air and broke my little heart. And so I should have been able to handle it, but I've never gone back to that game, and I don't think I will, because I doubt I'll ever be on a Packers podcast where somebody asks me to relive a painful thing.
And Micah may do one someday.
but I'm thrilled. Maybe George Cumby, who he's in the area.
There you go, George Cumby.
But I think this is cool. So I'm very excited.
Well, just for context too, 1975 was a really interesting year. Highly recommend the documentary on Netflix that talks about that. Was such a big year in America. We were leaving Vietnam. We had gone through this tumultuous time of the 60s, all sorts of controversy in the United States. And we started to make movies about it. And we started to make All the President's Men. This was not related to Vietnam or racial equality or anything like that, but Jaws came out in 1975. The Godfather, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And it was this big year of, we were making the transition from going from, I don't really know what's going on in America, to, hey, our 200th anniversary is coming up. The bicentennial patch is on the Cowboys and Steelers jersey. It was a really interesting time in America, and we needed some hope. We needed some good things to happen. I highly recommend you watch that documentary sometime. And this was, to this date, the biggest Super Bowl yet. 80 million people tuned into this thing, and I really think it was the first huge Super Bowl.
Yeah, and it's amazing how quickly everybody knew this is the greatest Super Bowl that has ever been played. Like the next day, people were saying that. Like the first 9 were kind of slogs and mostly ugly games. And this one was a beautiful game with beautiful moments, star-studded. The entire country now understood this is the event of the country. Like, the first couple Super Bowls, it happened, but famously there were tickets available for Super Bowl I, and all the networks got to show it. And we didn't call it the Lombardi Trophy because Lombardi was in the game and still alive. And so all these things had evolved in just 10 years. And honestly, on this day, on this field at the Orange Bowl, I really believe the entire NFL pivoted to realizing the power of the passing game. And it turns out it was mostly because of Terry Bradshaw and Lynn Swann.
Yeah.
And both of them on a career heater. That's the other thing, is if you took every Lynn Swann game of his entire career and stacked them from best to worst, this is absolutely his signature game at a signature moment that, frankly, he still probably has this raised level of prominence because of what happened on this field on this day. So from there, Bill Walsh, Joe Montana, and what we have today. But before this game, and even in this game, teams still thought the best way to play football was to run it into the pile at a alarming rate, and both teams did. This is a run heavy Super Bowl X.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it.
In fact, Terry Bradshaw had 9 completions in the entire game, and four of them are to Lynn Swann for 161 yards.
Yes, and it's just incredible. It's a different game that does stand out, and it's fitting that it was on CBS, because that's another thing. As the NFL started to become America's game in the 70s, a big part of that was the NFL Today with Brent Musburger, Phyllis George, Irv Cross, and Jimmy the Greek. And it was fun hearing their voices, seeing their faces from 1975. You have Pat Summerall on the call, along with Tom Brookshire, and Hank Stram for the last 2 minutes, because Tom Brookshire was making his way to the locker room. I don't remember that. That's kind of bizarre. Do you think, was Hank Stram doing the radio that day? Because he used to do a lot of radio, and then he just walked over to the TV booth.
I don't know. It was so weird that out of nowhere, here's Hank Stram and equally weird, Tom Brookshire. First of all, Pat Summerall never sounded different from the first time I heard him to the last time I heard him. He always sounded like your grandfather who knew a lot about football and just had this incredibly gripping delivery.
Oh, such a great call.
It was minimal, but I guess what I'm saying is, even in 1975, he sounded like he had been doing it his whole life, when in reality he was an actual football player not that long before this. And the thing about Brookshire that cracks me up is he does sound like he's kind of winging it quite a bit.
Yeah.
And he does sound like a lot of his friends are telling him things that he is using in the broadcast. And then also in the post game, which I'm positive we don't have time to go through today, but his number one question to most of the Steelers when he's talking to them about the outcome of this game is that they're single. and he's really obsessed with each player's marital status, and if they are single, how much fun it's going to be now that they've won a Super Bowl again.
He did that during the game too, and he's talking about Jack Lambert, and he's single, and
yes.
Yeah, well, and
Franco Harris is single. Everybody's single, and boy, think of the ladies now, boys. That's really why we play football, is for the ladies.
And boy, you get the sense, including the very first second we see Tom Brookshire and Pat Summerall on the broadcast. Man, I think they partied so hard that week. I mean, they start the broadcast by laughing, going, "Hey, here we are in Miami. It's been a fun week, huh?"
Yeah.
And yeah, it's so choice. I'm so glad we did this. Highly recommend it to any Cowboy or football fan to go back through this.
Yes.
You want to play Brent in how we just talked a little differently on television in 1975?
Yes. Okay. So this is actually from the post-game show.
It's the post-game, yeah.
It's not the most chronological way we've ever done it, but who cares? So yes, at the end of the broadcast, they're about to say goodbye, and it is Brent, Phyllis, and Irv. And Brent compliments Phyllis, and I'm positive in his heart he believes he's saying the kindest thing to her. But with our 2026 ears, it sounds like the most condescending and probably sexist thing you could possibly say to Phyllis George. Here it is.
This brings to a close certainly the most pleasant football season I have ever enjoyed. And Phyllis George, I want to tell everyone that you did a magnificent job this year. I wasn't too sure about working with a woman, folks, in coverage of football. She did a job. She's Rookie of the Year.
Thank you, Brent. Thank you very much. I've had a ball. I really have. You two have been the greatest, and I've said it before, folks. They are super, and they have cooperated with me, and I hope vice versa through this long football season. And it's kind of sad that it's coming to an end now, but hopefully we'll be back next year.
Yes, it is. And Irv, it was nice to have somebody who understood the game as well as you did around you. Help us out.
Thanks a lot, Brent. But I'll tell you, it was a team effort. The people in front of the cameras, of course, you see, but we had hundreds of people working behind us who did a whale of a job
like
for us.
Mike Pearl.
Boy, I tell you, I just loved it. It was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed it. I hope we are back.
There you go.
Oh, man. Yeah.
I can't believe...
I mean,
that
they told me I was working with a woman. Football, I'm not sure how that was going to work out, but hey, you were okay, Phyllis.
I thought she was going to be baking for us. I didn't know you talked football. It's amazing.
Right to Irv, and it's nice to have someone who understands football, Irv.
Over on the other side, we have the person that can actually see football before.
Man, Phyllis George out of North Texas, Miss America. As a kid, I thought she was great. I loved Phyllis George. I just thought she was tremendous.
Big
I love
Cowboy.
that whole setup.
She was public about being a Cowboy fan too, so I bet.
Yeah, maybe
George
that's why too.
that.
I thought, well, at least Phyllis is on her side. Jimmy the Greek certainly isn't.
No,
but at least Phyllis is. Okay, let's get to the game.
Yes,
let's get to the game because we watch this like we would any Cowboys game. I've got all sorts of notes, and let's just go from the first quarter. We'll start talking a little bit about this game.
Okay.
And I do remember this about watching it, just how bright it was. Last game on the artificial turf at the Orange Bowl, and it was just a bright, sunshiny day.
And also a day game, which is important because
yes, day game. That's right.
I want to say maybe the next year in Pasadena, the Raiders and Vikings played a day-ish game, but then in New Orleans, Cowboys and Broncos, that started the late Sunday afternoon into darkness Super Bowl time slot, which we know today. I mean, it really hasn't switched much since Super Bowl 12. So I want to say this was a 1 o'clock Central Time, maybe even noon Super Bowl kickoff, because they went live to the Phoenix Open after the broadcast of this.
Yeah, we still had the Phoenix Open to sort out.
So imagine enough daylight in Phoenix for a golf tournament after the Super Bowl was already over.
2:14 Eastern time is when we kicked off.
Okay, so 1:15 in Dallas. Okay.
And by the way, the kickoff, the Cowboys have a little tricky, very significant. Preston Pearson catches it on the goal line, starts running right, and hands off to one of the Dirty Dozen members, a rookie linebacker by the name of Hollywood Henderson, who starts trucking up the left sideline. And this is my first what if. What if this gets taken all the way and the only one who touches Hollywood Henderson is Roy Gerela, the Pittsburgh kicker? Bob, why didn't he just truck him and just take off into the end zone?
It's a great question, and in week 2, as a rookie, he did this against the Cardinals, and so they took the kickoff 97 yards. Was he Hollywood back then, or was he still Thomas?
I think he was still just Thomas.
Hollywood?
Yeah, he wasn't Hollywood yet. Yeah.
Okay, well, regardless, he was an incredibly fast linebacker, as anybody would know once they put him on kick return. And they're trying to get him the ball. Imagine a linebacker now in modern times being the guy you go to on an end around. But Roy Gerela, the claim was that he would go on to miss a couple really chip shot field goals because he had hurt his ribs on that play. And whether those two things are totally connected or not,
that makes some sense.
I don't know, but it seems to make sense that Roy Gerela had to give up his body to try to prevent the touchdown. And so the Cowboys opened the game in Steelers territory at the 44-yard line, and that's how the opening kickoff set them up nice.
And I say what if, because they didn't score on that possession. They had to punt it back, then they got good field position on Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh had to punt. And Bobby Walden drops the snap, and the Cowboys get it. I think it would have been blocked. I think he was a little freaked out by the Cowboys' rush. This will play into what happens at the end of the game as well. So the Cowboys get it in great shape, but that was my point about the Hollywood. What if he takes that the distance? Then the Cowboys get this dropped punt, and by the way, they score on the next play on a throw to Drew Pearson, which puts them up 7-0. What if this would have been 14-0 to start the game?
That's a great question, and we have audio of this Drew Pearson touchdown, so we can go to that here in a second. But I do also want to say on the Cowboys' first offensive play, L.C. Greenwood sacks Roger, and that will be the theme of the day, is that for a long time the Steelers held the record with sacks in a game. I guess some called them traps back then, as we've talked about. But they got Roger 7 times in this game, L.C. Greenwood 3, Dwight White 3. And, it was just the steel curtain was real. It was not made up by the media. It has not been blown out of proportion by some of us. They were the biggest, baddest dudes in the National Football League. And Doomsday was great, but the steel curtain probably was the difference in both of these Super Bowls, but specifically this Super Bowl 10. Let's check out that Drew Pearson touchdown, though. This is a one-play drive. The Cowboys, after that dropped punt, get the ball at the 29-yard line, and then this happened.
Down on the Pittsburgh Steelers 29-yard line.
The Steelers didn't have a turnover last year, winning the Super Bowl in the entire game.
Roger Staubach sets him up as Pearson moves to his back. And he fakes to Pearson. Staubach going for the bundle. Got Drew Pearson across the middle. He might get in. Touchdown, Drew Pearson. The Cowboys take the lead. 29-yard touchdown pass from Roger Staubach to Drew Pearson.
And Patrick, absolutely no pressure on Roger at all. He faked the in run. He made Drew Pearson shift back. Now watch the fake and see where Lambert, number 58, goes. Lambert drops back. He's still undecided. And I'll tell you, Drew Pearson coming under. He's not only a gutsy receiver, he's dynamite when you have to catch it. Look at this.
So you got the play action right with the 2 pulling guards, Blaine Nye out there in space, and Burton Lawless. Back then in the shotgun, the pulling guard, the backside would actually circle around, and he would kind of be Rodgers' personal protector, almost like punt protector. It felt like, and so he would circle around, and then because everybody believed that I guess Preston Pearson was going to get the handoff, Lambert's over that way, and now Drew Pearson on a front side dig has the entire middle of the field wide open. That will become a story in the fourth quarter, by the way, because the Cowboys will try it again. That exact play you'll see later, and the Steelers were sitting on it, but they weren't on this one. And I'll just tell you, George, I don't want to spoil the outcome here, but the team that scores the first touchdown has won the first 9 Super Bowls. Man. So that probably means the Cowboys will win this one.
Yeah, and I remember them talking about that back in 1975. I felt great about it. And in my simple brain, as I'm watching this week, I'm cheering Drew Pearson going into the end zone. I'm like, okay, there's a start right there. There's 7-0. Yeah, I couldn't help it. It was so great just watching your heroes play again. And
it's hard to believe how great Drew Pearson was.
Oh, man. Doesn't he look smooth, too? I mean, making the grab with his hands and just bolting down the sideline, then spiking it over his back. It's like, heck yeah, that's Drew Pearson.
And honestly, watching this Super Bowl, both teams, it's watching the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Yeah. It's so ridiculous to know that Tom Landry, Roger Staubach, Drew Pearson are on one side, and Chuck Noll, Terry Bradshaw, and Lynn Swann are on the other side, and they're going to do battle against Hall of Fame defenses, Steel Curtain, Doomsday. I mean, this is the Pro Football Hall of Fame. This entire game is loaded. Actually, Super Bowl 13 will have a few more Hall of Famers because we will add guys like Tony Dorsett to the story.
Jackie Smith.
Yeah, Jackie Smith to the story. But it's remarkable how many immortals are playing on this battlefield on this day.
Boy, and talk about things that are going to set the tone. Next Steelers possession, they set a tone with the Lynn Swann catch down the right sideline that I'd forgotten about that one. Oh, he picked on Mark Washington the whole game. Washington had good coverage. The pass is high, and it looks like it's going to sail out of bounds. And somehow Swann launches into the air, brings it down, and comes right back down on his feet. And so how did he do that? I mean, this is third and forever too, I think, when he caught it, and they go down and tie the score at 7-7. But that was a precursor of things to come with Swann just killing the Cowboys that day.
Yeah, and there's a couple things there. Number one, I've always kind of wondered why the Cowboys allowed Mark Washington on Lynn Swann that entire day when you have Mel Renfro. Now, I know Renfro's getting up there in years, and I also know that it's a different game, and maybe corners didn't travel, and there's a lot that I'm unclear about how 1975 worked, especially in Tom Landry's defensive brain. And he's a genius, so we will give him the benefit of the doubt. But this Super Bowl is interesting because two of the main characters in this Super Bowl are Mark Washington and Percy Howard. And Mark Washington has 1 year as a starter in the NFL, and it's 1975. He's in the league for 10 years, 9 of them with the Cowboys. But for the most part, he is a reserve.
Yeah.
And this one season, they made him the starter. And this entire game, the Steelers, when they needed it, went right at him. And the Cowboys didn't really give him any help because in 2 of these plays, the other 2, the third down that Terry throws to midfield where Lynn sort of knocks it up to himself, and then, of course, the game winner, they're both on like cover 0 blitzes, like safety blitzes.
Yeah.
And so Mark Washington has no help against Lynn Swann, and you could argue that's the story of the game. And then Percy Howard will go on to catch a touchdown, and I believe, George, it will be his only catch as a Dallas Cowboy.
Yes, and the first rookie to catch a touchdown in a Super Bowl.
I mean, he played 1 season in the NFL, had 0 catches in the regular season, caught 1 pass in the playoffs, and it was a touchdown in Super Bowl 10, and that was his entire career.
That's it. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Also, going in on this broadcast, when you watch this on YouTube, going in and out of the breaks, they play the old CBS music too. That was awesome. And
no doubt.
Like I said, I'm sure they presented it this way. I think this Super Bowl 9, I believe, was on NBC. But even for this is 50 years ago, and I was expecting. I missed the what we refer to as the Fox box that has the score and the time, because you're like, okay, where are we now in the first quarter?
Yes.
You're trying to catch up, and you only get updated when you come back from breaks. But I just love that old CBS music that would play in and out, and it was just awesome. And I hope you enjoyed the shots from the Goodyear blimp, Bob. They were
I did.
high above the Orange Bowl.
In fact, in the fourth quarter, and we'll show it to you in a little bit, but in the fourth quarter, the play of the game is preceded with an amazing shot from the blimp that kind of shows the all-22 right before the immortal snap happened, almost like we ordered it because we knew what was about to happen. So,
yeah.
There's so many things about this game that do kind of scratch that itch, but I think wondering who the composer is that gave us that CBS NFL theme, if they've ever been given the credit they deserve, I don't know, but it was a beautiful thing.
Okay, so the Cowboys come back and take a 10-7 lead.
Yes.
They get a field goal, and that score would remain for a long time, but man, there's all sorts of stuff that happened in that second quarter. I know I'm still sour grapes, but there was a catch made as the Steelers were driving in Cowboys territory, and it was the tight end. It wasn't Stallworth. It was the tight end. By the way, that was interesting, too, that they were talking on the broadcast about how they were wondering why John Stallworth didn't start. That's a good question. I don't know why he didn't start.
Well, I mean, my theory, because I thought about this, and I also noticed the Cowboys had a lot of talent on the bench, and this was a time where if you were a young player, it honestly often didn't matter if you were better. It didn't matter if Randy White was better than the guys that he was sitting for. It wasn't his time yet. And so, some of these future Hall of Famers just kind of had to wait until those careers were over of the guys in front of them, and then Randy White and John Stallworth would become the Hall of Famers they were, but they were not starters as rookies right off the bat.
Okay, it was Riley Brown. That's who it was. I lost the note there. Bradshaw scrambles, completes it in quotes, to Riley Brown, and it really was a completion, but they called it incomplete. It's recovered by D.D. Lewis. You're just like, wait a minute, what? And no, they called it a completion. It should have either been incomplete or a fumble recovery.
Right.
But there's no replay. And it's just like, oh my gosh, it turns out they didn't score anyway. But there was that. There was a near interception by D.D. Lewis that I thought, oh man, what if, as we talk about a game of inches, and it really was that second quarter, and we'll get to the second half here in a second, but the rest of the second quarter, it was almost watching electric football,
Yes.
No one was really accomplishing much of anything.
No, the Cowboys had a small lead, and it felt like they were very, very nervous about making mistakes that would give the Steelers the ball. And so it kind of looks like Tom Landry got super, super conservative. And it was a lot of Robert Newhouse and Preston Pearson and Doug Dennison right into the pile. The Cowboys could not really run the ball, and the Steelers weren't really productive either. But in the end, I think we would look back and say, man, the Cowboys had great field position all day. They had great opportunities, but they just kind of wasted like the middle 8 possessions of the game. They scored on that first possession, or the second one, I should say. All of their early possessions were into Steelers territory, and they just didn't cash in enough to give themselves any sort of wiggle room into the second half, and that would become a story for sure.
I know my biggest complaint for my man Tom Landry, and as a fan, I never used to question Landry. It was like, well, that's the way Tom saw it. That's the way it should be. It was the game in 1975. You're right. Very run-heavy game. But the Cowboys were such a good screen team. Not as good as they became with Tony Dorsett, but they were still really good at it. Newhouse, Preston Pearson were really good at running screens. I do believe I counted one screen that was run, and it worked pretty well. That would have been one way maybe to slow down the Pittsburgh front four, and they never really seemed to try from it. Maybe in your viewing of 1975, was the screen pass not as big as it would become in the Landry offense?
That's interesting. I guess I haven't noticed a ton of that, and I do feel like the Cowboys had that as a big part of their bread and butter through the season. When I'm watching those other games on their march to this game, so I got to tell you, man, looking at the Steelers and even their playoff run, where they dominate Baltimore and then have that slugfest with Oakland on that frozen field in the AFC Championship game, which, by the way, I would also like to recommend to people if you find yourself extremely bored and you want to go back and watch the 75 AFC Championship game. That was a war on a frozen field in Pittsburgh. And the reason that's relevant to me, and this is also in the 1975 America's game, which is mostly or all about the champion Steelers. They get the America's game if they win the Super Bowl. The way Lynn Swann and Terry Bradshaw were carried off the field in that game. And so both Terry Hanratty finished several games because Terry Bradshaw could not make it all the way through a game. And then the Raiders were trying to kill Lynn Swann. They just were. And it was Jack Tatum, and I forget who the other safety was for them, or the other defensive back that was absolutely clobbering him. But there's a famous picture
Neil
where Joe
Cozy?
Green. I don't think that's the name I'm looking for, but Joe Green is carrying Lynn Swann off the field almost like he's carrying a bride over the threshold.
Wow.
In both arms. You never see this in football. It's
No.
a big lineman just holding a wide receiver like it's his infant son, or it was crazy. And he's carrying him off the field, and there's actually a famous picture of that. And Lynn Swann jokes that Joe Green signed it to him, and it's always been a moment between those two guys. And Joe said, "Well, listen, I was only doing it because I didn't want to have to waste a timeout waiting for the stretchers for Lynn." But the reason I say all that is that's a story in this game, because the build up to the game is Lynn Swann and his status. And I think this is important because his status to play in the game is very much in question all week. Meanwhile, Cliff Harris, who it's amazing because he's a friend of both of ours at this point, and he's just the nicest guy you've ever met, is Cliff Harris. But boy, was he a man who stirred up the pot back then.
Oh, man.
And he would make opponents crazy. I assume he was very popular amongst Cowboy fans. But outside the Cowboys world, it was, you better keep an eye on that Cliff Harris. He's a troublemaker.
Yeah, well, let's get to that coming up next, because I think Cliff Harris did something that I agree with Tom Brookshire. I think this turned this game when this moment happened. Let's go there next, because it's a turning moment in Super Bowl 10, and we'll do that on the Musers, the Podcast Cowboys edition. Doing something a lot of fun this week. We look back at Super Bowl 10. Bob's been following the 1975 season, and it ends up January of 1976, Orange Bowl in Miami, Cowboys and Steelers, the first of 3 meetings between these two teams in the Super Bowl. And the Cowboys had a 10-7 halftime lead. It was almost doubled in stats. Pittsburgh had 194 yards in the first half. Dallas had 98. But the Cowboys are hanging in there. They're playing great defense, for sure. And outside of a couple big plays to Lynn Swann, both teams kind of go back and forth in the third quarter. Roger does throw an interception to J.T. Thomas. I thought that was interesting. Steelers with 11 straight games with an interception. That's how good that defense was. Just week after week coming up with at least one turnover. Then Pittsburgh in great field position. They're at the Cowboy 15, but the drive stalls. Here comes Roy Girella, who we talked about opening kickoff. He's the last one to save a touchdown to Thomas Henderson on a reverse. He takes some heavy contact on that, and this is not a very long field goal, 33 yards, I do believe.
And keep in mind, he's already missed a 36-yarder.
He's already missed a 36-yarder. And this is a nasty looking kick. It's no good. Cliff Harris rushes in from the right side and really didn't come close to blocking the kick, but he winds up standing right next to Roy Girella. And as he misses it, he taps him on the helmet, and there's no telling what he's saying to him, like,
that's right.
Hey, nice kick there, pal, with probably some really strong language. Then Jack Lambert takes exception to that, tries to body slam Cliff Harris, and all hell breaks loose here, Bob.
Jethro Pugh grabs Cliff Harris and said, "We need you."
Well, Jack Lambert was after Cliff Harris. That's the reason Jethro grabbed the defensive safety.
So Girella heads back to the sideline, a little less confident than he might have been before this game started. 10-7 Dallas.
All right, take a look at what happened. Girella's just missed his second field goal. Now Lambert's walking by. Here's Harris telling him something and grabs the kicker. And Lambert at 6'5" works him over. From Washita, Arkansas to Jack Lambert's a long way to go, isn't it?
Man, I've got so many problems with that. There's a
That
personal
includes
foul
Jack
right
Lambert?
there.
Yeah, I mean, now should it have been offsetting personal fouls? Probably.
Maybe, yeah,
But-
you probably
but-
shouldn't touch another player. That's taunting in today's game for sure.
But Lambert just threw him, and you're all looking at it. How's
Body
that
slams
not
him.
anything?
Well, and the reason, and we can get to this later, that Percy Howard is playing receiver is because
Yes.
Golden Richards has his neck kneed by, was it Edwards that was doing that to him?
Mel Blount.
It was Mel Blount who was driving his knees into his neck, and that knocked Golden Richards out of the game. There were so many penalties that could have happened, but didn't. Again, it's a different game back then. There would have been probably, 10 roughing the passer calls in this game if you played by today's standards. But
Larry Cole just about removed Terry Bradshaw's jaw.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, and we'll get to that key play in the fourth quarter, but yeah, to this point after this melee and they separate them, no penalty flag somehow. Pittsburgh does not score the field goal, but from that moment on, Jack Lambert, not that he already wasn't having a good game, he played like a man possessed, especially in that next possession. You can see him just going, an enraged linebacker going around the field and just whooping folks.
There's no question. This is one of those deals where you read about it and you think, okay, you guys are blowing this out of proportion. Jack Lambert was not foaming at the mouth, madman, because of that Cliff Harris thing. I challenge you to go back and watch the footage and tell me that he doesn't look like he wants to kill anybody wearing a Cowboys uniform for the next 30 minutes and maybe for the rest of the game. So I think you properly call this. This is not folklore or legend or a fairy tale. I think Jack Lambert was probably playing pretty well, and then Cliff Harris turned him into the Incredible Hulk, and Jack Lambert was a man possessed the rest of the game. So it may be coincidental, but I do think it's worth pointing out that the Cowboys offense was incredibly unproductive from that moment forward until it's 21-10 and too late, you could argue. Yeah. So I mean, they weren't gangbusters before that incident. So I'm not saying it totally holds up, but the next possession is just a whole lot of nothing. And you could argue that Jack Lambert was on a mission. In fact, I don't know if we can play that post-game cut, but to jump ahead, Tom Brookshire asks him about this, and I do think it's worth listening to.
All right. Sonny, we've got a guy that I think changed the tempo of the game. I said this early in the third period. Lambert, you're still mad, you're still hot, but I saw you doing a lot of jumping and banging, and you knew you had to get it started in the second half. What turned you on?
Well, I felt that in the first half we were intimidated a little bit, and the Pittsburgh Steelers aren't supposed to be intimidated. We're supposed to be intimidators. So I was a little bit excited, and when after the second field goal Girella missed, Harris slapped him around the head a little bit, and that's just not going to happen when I'm out there as far as I look at it, and I think we got going, and we picked it up, and we do.
He said it right there, man. He was so fired up after that, and he's an incredible linebacker, dominant linebacker. I mean, they had They had 4 or 5 dominant players on that defense.
Oh, yeah.
Lambert, Green, L.C. Greenwood, Blunt. I mean, it's
you could argue, like, what are you supposed to do against these guys?
Yeah.
And the Cowboys, their offense in 75 surprised people because most people properly looked at the Cowboys roster and said, where's the juice? Like, and by the way, in for 76 and 77, the Cowboys would add a fair amount of playmaking, but they didn't have a deep army of playmakers in 75. They were okay, but I mean, Preston Pearson is pretty much released by the Steelers, and he becomes one of the Cowboys' very best weapons almost immediately because, you know, Calvin Hill's gone, Dwayne Thomas is gone, the wide receiver position is kind of Drew Pearson and a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Tight end is pretty shallow at that point. And so, you know, against a defense like the Steelers, we could almost go backwards and say, how the heck do you beat the Vikings and their defense and the Rams and their defense to even get to the Super Bowl with how modest Staubach's weapons were in 1975? I think that
it speaks
might be
a lot
the story.
to Roger. A lot to Roger and how he led that team. So, yeah, after that moment, a Dallas punt, a Pittsburgh punt, and as we talk about a matter of inches, Cliff Harris goes over the Wagner punt. I mean, it goes beneath him. That was so close to being blocked.
Yeah.
Again, remember that. So that's the second punt that the Cowboys almost blocked. They had another one where Wagner dropped it, and the other one that was almost blocked was Bob Brunig, who got really close to one in the first half. Then Pittsburgh has to punt again. Cowboys with really good defense. And then you have a Dallas possession that starts with a flea flicker, and it's going nowhere. No one's open. Roger has to eat it. He gets sacked.
But you can see the desperation in the play calling. Now we're in the fourth quarter, and you can definitely see, like, let's try the flea flicker. We can't get anything else done. And so the Cowboys are trying things. It just didn't work.
So this is where the game really turns. After a third down sack, the Cowboys have to punt, and it's a jailbreak rush, and it's Reggie
Harrison
with the block. It
right
goes
down Main Street.
Out of the back of the end zone, and it is it's a safety. But it just, if the Lambert incident hadn't turned it, this really turned it, because I remember watching at the time thinking, oh gosh, here comes Pittsburgh. They're going to start mauling the Cowboys, and they really did. Then they get the free kick, and this time Jarrella makes a field goal. It's 12-10 with 8:32 left. Still just, it's a 2-point game. All these bad things have happened to the Cowboys, and a testament to the Cowboys defense, they're still in this thing.
That's right. And so now there's 8.5 minutes to go, and it's the Cowboys' 11th possession, and they still are sitting on 7 points. And so that one play they hit on was the Drew Pearson touchdown back in the first quarter. So they call
let's run that play again.
They call that exact same play, and it has a wildly different result. This is probably the Roger interception that killed them. And let's have a listen.
Total offense so far, in fact, is just 159 yards. The Steelers have 100 more. Roger Staubach behind for the first time. He's going to throw. Down the middle, picked off by the Steelers' Mike Wagner. And down to the 5-yard line.
Whoa! The name of the game is defense. There's Wagner. 4 interceptions this year.
Burton Lawless, number 66, dragging his right arm. The Steelers and that defensive unit turn it over again. There goes Lawless.
And you know, Wagner backed off from it, let Roger throw the ball down the middle, and then he came charging. There was no doubt about coverage. He was going for the ball. Watch this. Now watch Lawless setting up for him. He's the one that got hurt. Wagner's heading for the goal line.
really heading in that direction. Inside.
And this is what's really interesting about going back 50 years and talking about our legends, is that Roger just predetermined his throw. Like the moment the play was called, he knew, I'm going to hit Drew Pearson at the exact same spot where I hit him on the touchdown, and the Steelers are going to defend it the same way. And this is what an in-game adjustment looks like, is that the Steelers are like, okay, they want to show us play action on first down, especially to start a drive. When they do that, we need to defend it differently. Don't worry about the run. They're coming back to Drew Pearson at this spot in the field. Let's have our safety crash on it. Let's have Lambert drop on it. And Roger threw it blindly into triple coverage. Yeah. And he just decided, I think, and again, nobody ever said any of these guys are perfect. They're playing against other legends, but I often think about how the media today would have handled a player from the past doing something like that, like we might deal with Dak or Josh Allen or any of the modern quarterbacks. It's a different ballgame, but that is a quarterback who guessed, and it might have cost his team the Super Bowl. I know that's harsh, but it might have. Well,
but it didn't. They weren't out of it, because you think, okay, they're knocking on the door now. They get this right at the 7, I do believe, the 7-yard line on the return by Wagner. So, this game's about to be 19-10, but the Cowboy defense holds, and here's another.
They really do.
Here's another one of those moments. Franco Harris gets absolutely tattooed, and the ball comes loose, and it pops up in the air, and you're thinking, if there's a player that's within striking distance, he plucks it out of the air and maybe runs the other way with it. It's up there so long, but it comes right back down to him.
Yeah.
And the Steelers maintain possession. They don't score, but they don't fumble the ball away, and they get another field goal.
The Steelers had luck on their side in this game. Now, it doesn't mean they won because of luck, but the ball bounced their way many times in this game, and that's one of them. I also want to go back and be fair to Roger on this one thing. If you get sacked 7 times by the steel curtain, it has an effect when you have time to throw. And so I'm not saying that he made a bad throw because he was unprepared. I'm saying he made a bad throw because it's the middle of the fourth quarter, and he's been running for his life for a good portion of this game, and ultimately that accumulation adds up and has an effect on a guy, and I think that's probably what happened.
Well, but
you hold him.
But you hold him in, okay, this is still a game. It's 15-10, so you're down 5 points. Cowboys get the ball back, and they can't do anything with it. Another sack. After they ran their first screen of the day, they got 5 yards to Robert Newhouse, but then a sack, and then they're in big trouble, so they have to punt. But still, 4:25 left. You've got a chance on this thing, and you've got them at 3rd and 5.
Yes.
Landry decides, let's send everybody. If you have a star on your helmet, Cliff Harris blitzed, D.D. Lewis blitzed from the edge, and I
D.D. Lewis has him dead.
I know this is another thing.
You know what?
Angle in Bradshaw is taken apart, maybe fumbles the ball, but he steps. I give Bradshaw a little credit for stepping up a little bit to mess up the rush angle of Lewis, and then he throws the pass of his life.
Yeah, so a couple things that I'd like to point out. The D.D. Lewis thing, this is why when we talk about draft players, especially pass rushers, we want to know, can they turn the corner? Can they flatten their pass rush? And because, normal hips, when you're running, you're going to run past the quarterback unless you can really turn and control your body on a dime. And D.D. Lewis has him blindside. Like D.D. Lewis must have seen that for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
Just that Bradshaw is I have a chance to hit Bradshaw to win the Super Bowl, and this is just one of those moments that I'm positive he never stopped seeing in his mind's eye. And then Cliff Harris gets clipped by Rocky Blyer. and goes flying through the air. But Cliff Harris is a well-timed blitz that would get Bradshaw. And this play, you could write a book about this one play. In fact, we should play it for the people. This is the play of the game, third and 4, 3rd and 5. This is one of the most famous plays in NFL history. Terry Bradshaw to Lynn Swann to win the game.
Still here. Harris, 25 carries now for 82 yards. He carried 34 times last year, you recall. Here is Bradshaw. Bothered from behind. Lynn Swann is open. Got it. Steeler touchdown. Mark Washington with him. The Cowboys had the safety flipped on. 64-yard touchdown pass from Bradshaw to Lynn Swann, and Bradshaw is down.
Bradshaw is down, but he threw the ball about 65 yards, and he threw it a ton. Now he's on his feet. He's got a long time to rest up. That's got to be one of the great passes in Super Bowl history or in pro football history.
Dallas had a blitz going. Let's look at it again.
All right, here he is, number 12. He does not like the play pass, and what difference does it make now? Gets a run by the blitz Mel Renfro man. Here it is, and Lynn Swann does it again. Mark Washington's there, but he's in the wake by about a step and a half.
Swann has now caught 4 passes for 161 yards. Bobby Walden to hold it. Bradshaw on the sideline. Here's that last catch, Hank.
He gets behind in good shape. The ball is thrown right over the shoulder perfectly. Terrific concentration by Swann. And, of course, he makes the reception, goes all the way in for the...
Pretty good. I mean, Mark Washington took a beating this day. That was pretty good coverage.
What do you want him to do?
What a great throw. I mean,
what a great throw.
Great throw.
What a great throw. You'll never see a better deep ball. He gets absolutely tattooed as the ball is leaving his hands by Larry Cole. And Bradshaw will tell people for the rest of his life that he's out cold before he hits the ground. Like, he is unconscious.
You like that concussion protocol the Steelers use there? It's just get him to his feet and take him off the field. Bradshaw's like a rag doll. He can't move.
He can't move. They're just dragging him off like they did Lynn Swann the week before. It was a different time, and then in the broadcast, you can pretty much see that everyone's distracted because they're trying to get Terry Bradshaw to an ambulance, basically, and you know, like, he cannot go on. That's the other thing, is if that falls incomplete and the Steelers, you know, need to get points, they got Terry Hanratty, and I'm not positive they want him throwing a single pass, which we would find
Obviously
out in
not.
a little bit. So I mean, there's so many things about that play that are just wildly fascinating, including the ramifications. You know, it's almost like the Jackie Harris play in Super Bowl 13, where you're just like, how many dynasty tags and guys in the Hall of Fame and just memories. You know, the Steelers, I guess, get the spoils of victory, but these are the margins, you know, and this
so
is
close.
This is how close a game is, and honestly, I can't think of a better play in Super Bowl history. I'm sure there are a few, but Bradshaw. First, how about this? How about Chuck Noll having the stones, or whoever called that play? I did Bradshaw call his own plays? I'm trying to think.
I think he did.
I think he did too.
Yeah.
But whoever is dialing up with the lead, the Bomberooski on a 3rd and medium, where honestly I'd probably go to Franco Harris in that spot or something.
Yeah.
But they dial up Lynn Swann again, and like I said, one catch per quarter is all Lynn Swann had. He had 1 in the first, 1 in the second, 1 in the third, 1 in the fourth, 4 catches, 161 yards, 1 touchdown. But
they were all masterpieces.
Seriously, what a freaking heater, man. You're in the zone. I can't miss today. No matter what we do, I'm going to hit Lynn Swann, and we're going to profit because it's our day.
Okay, so it's 21-10 because Dorella misses extra point.
Boy, kicking was hard back then.
21-10. So the Cowboys get the ball back. okay, wait a minute here. We got 2 minutes left.
Yes.
30 yards to Drew Pearson. Preston Pearson over the shoulder catch for 20. Sacked by Dwight White. Okay. Well, now we're at the 2-minute mark. There were more than 2 minutes left then. Now the Cowboys, right after the 2-minute warning, Roger comes back on, and here's the Percy Howard moment. He finds him down the left sideline. Defensive back fell down, and it left Howard wide open, and he caught it. Okay, hang on. We got 1:48 left. It's 21-17. We've seen Roger do this before. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got all of your timeouts. Okay, this is still doable. And I remember in 1975, again, the belief thing, I believed.
Right.
Starting with the onside kick, which wasn't even close. It's kicked right to an offensive lineman. Why do we have him out there for Pittsburgh?
Okay. Thank you for noticing that as well. The Steelers' hands team appears to be their starting offensive line is out there fielding the onside kick, and I'm like, what is going on? But yeah, they did it, and they recovered, so I guess no harm, no foul.
Okay, so Pittsburgh has it at the Dallas 43. Terry Hanratty is at cornerback because
timeout. This is important. You score to go 21-17. Again, I know Tom Landry's a legend, and I'm not debating that. I'm not trying to sully his good name.
Why not kick it off?
Why not kick it off? They got Terry Hanratty. Terry Bradshaw's in an ambulance. We're down 21-17. We have all of our timeouts, and their offense will not function. Let's kick it deep.
Because as we're going to talk about, the clock went faster back then, and I don't think coaches looked at it the same way. I'm glad you brought that up because, yes, Terry Hanratty's a quarterback, so they're not going to throw it. And you're right. That's a great point. I didn't even think about that because I was so wrapped up in the game. And this was driving me crazy yet, but I got a great football question for you, and you may have the answer for it here in a second. Hanratty hands off to Harris, -2, timeout Cowboys. 2nd and 12. Harris, 2 yards, timeout Cowboys. Now you got 1:33 left, and it's 3rd and 10, and Steelers are going to run the ball to try to make the Cowboys use their final timeout. They do. Rocky Bleier gets 2 yards, timeout Cowboys. Now it's 4th and 8, and you're going to punt the ball, but because you had a Wagner drop and 2 near blocked punts by the Cowboys, Chuck Noll decides to run a play on offense, not trying to pick up the first down. He's just going to run Bleier to run off some clock, but he only gets a yard, and the Cowboys have it at their own 38 with 1:22 left.
Could you imagine what happens to Chuck Noll's spotless reputation if the Cowboys come back and win this game with that incredibly horrible possession where he's literally telling us he doesn't believe he can punt from midfield without it getting blocked?
Unbelievable. Okay, now here's where we get to the Cowboys with a chance. Their own 38. First play, here comes the pressure again. Roger escapes, runs for 12 to midfield. At this point, you're thinking, okay, run the play, and they do. And with 50 seconds left, Preston Pearson catches it, but he turns inside.
He cuts inside.
What is Preston Pearson thinking? But he still gets a first down. He's to the 37, so that was a gaffe. But the Cowboys then line up, and it takes them forever to line up, and they're shifting, and they're... Bob, when was the first time we started clocking the football?
Wow.
Because I was just thinking, clock it, Roger, clock it. And I don't think that was in the playbook in 90s? 80s?
Well, no.
Maybe 80s?
When did Dan Marino do the fake clocking it?
That was 90s.
Was it? Okay. I thought that might have been late 80s even. I need to look this up, but I feel like my whole life guys have clocked the ball. That's interesting.
Now, maybe in desperate times, like, hey, they've got to stop the clock with 6 seconds left, but I mean, clocking it as a timeout when
I would just like to say if Tony Romo and Jason Garrett had botched the clock this badly, we'd still be doing segments on it.
So now
Like,
you're down to 20 seconds
they
on
got-
the incompletion.
they
You've
got
wasted
2
30 seconds.
They got 2 plays off in 57 seconds in the Super Bowl trying to move the ball down the field.
And that's why I'm
2
just
plays.
thinking. That's why I'm thinking the clock it thing was not a big strategy then.
I almost wonder if they were thinking of huddling. It's just like, guys, it's a Super Bowl. Hurry.
And the whole time I'm just get to the line and just throw the ball down. But okay, so then now after the incompletion, there's 12 seconds left. It's 2nd and 10.
Yeah.
Cowboys are still at the 37. He throws deep for Percy Howard again. And all I'm thinking is, could we give a little better effort with the Super Bowl on the line? Could you jump? Maybe? I don't know. That did look like a receiver fighting for his life in the Super Bowl in the end zone. I mean, I know at this point it's desperation.
Yeah.
And then the next one is a throw to Pearson. By the way, Bob, it looks like the same play as the Hail Mary. It's the Roger pump to his left to try to move the safety, and then thrown back right for Drew.
Do you think the Steelers were ready for the Hail Mary play 2 weeks after the Hail Mary happened?
Hey, they're going to throw it to 88, okay? And
they got one player on their offense that we're scared of. Let's put 10 guys around Drew Pearson.
And Edwards picks it in the end zone, and that's the end of the game. And I remember that terrible feeling back when I was watching this of, like we said at the top of the podcast, this isn't supposed to happen. And maybe even as a 10-year-old, I was mystified of how did a minute 22 just go by so fast with the ball at their own 38? It wasn't, you really only ran 2 legitimate plays.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know when football teams started learning how to gamify the clock and how to make sure that we maximize our opportunity. But for you to get the ball at your own 40 and for a minute 25 not to be enough to really put together a possession at all. And like I said, they used 57 seconds on 2 snaps, and it's just regrets. There are a few from Super Bowl X.
Yes.
This was an incredibly winnable game. And I do think, looking back, Tom Landry's ultra-conservatism for most of the game was kind of hoping, I think, a 10-7 lead would hold up.
Or maybe they could, hit a big one and win it 13-10 or something like that. That is going to be that kind of game.
Yeah, and so, it's interesting to even read the papers after the game and to read how when the Cowboys were gathering in Miami, Tom Landry went immediately to the film and he wanted to see some things and probably wanted to throw some pens at the screen, when some things showed up. I would love to hear like his authentic, off the record, kind of self-scout on how maybe I got this wrong or maybe I got this wrong. I don't know. And then, like I said, Roger just firing that ball into traffic deep in his own territory. So it's weird to watch this and have the experience in your takeaway that, gosh, if only Tom and Roger could have been what they normally are, this might go in the win column. But then you don't know, does that fuel Super Bowl 12 and what changes moving ahead? This was a year that my takeaway is from following this team every day for the whole year was that this was sort of found money.
Yeah.
And this was a beautiful Cinderella season that you kind of go back to the Met in Minneapolis and you say, that's probably where the season was supposed to end. And then we still got that bonus drilling of the Rams that was so beautiful. And then we got to go to a Super Bowl and all the experience and that, so I think it's obviously a net positive, the Dirty Dozen and just everything we discovered. But it does feel in the very end that the proverbial meat left on the bone by what could have been, because this game was absolutely winnable for the Cowboys.
I wanted to say this too, as I was watching this, it was a great trip back in time, but it was also just another commentary on the passing of time. I think you brought this up a couple of weeks ago. Leroy Jordan's not here anymore. Dave Edwards, Robert Newhouse. So many of these Cowboys are getting our
Lewis.
heroes are now in their 70s and 80s, and it was cool to look over and see the late Dan Reeves, a very young Dan Reeves, as the Cowboys' top offensive assistant. Mike Ditka as special teams coach, a young he's got the Ditka mustache and everything, but still he's I guess just a couple of years removed from being a player. There's Gene Stallings, a pretty young Gene Stallings, who would later go on and win a national championship with Alabama. It was, there was a real melancholy sadness to it as well.
Yeah.
Looking back and just going, man, life goes fast. And
these are the times, man.
Yeah, these are the times. And it was a great trip back outside of 21-17. Again, with my simple brain, I thought maybe there was a chance that if we played them again, something different would happen, but it didn't.
Yeah.
History doesn't change.
That's the thing, man. It's 3 hours in Miami on one day in January of 1976, and yet it determines perceptions for those guys for eternity, at least football eternity, whatever that means. And we'll go to the Super Bowl here in a little bit, and there will be banners and mementos and even statues to these legends for what they do and what they accomplish. And yet you think about it, sometimes it comes down to like 2 seconds. You look at the late D.D. Lewis trying to get to Terry Bradshaw's blind side there on that play. And just that moment, you can't get it back, but you realize that moment affects everything forevermore. And it's what makes sports great. It also kind of tries to help you give grace to the dudes that we rip mercilessly sometimes, and you're like, they're trying, man. They're doing everything they can.
Yeah.
I talked to Cliff Harris last week and because I want to get him on the show and maybe even on Football Friends at some point, but his text to me, and I assume he doesn't mind me saying this, he says, I still have nightmares about Super Bowl 10. I see myself hurdling Rocky Bleier on a safety blitz, almost made it to smack Bradshaw, but Rock caught my toe and I fell to the turf. Dang. And, think about that. I still have nightmares about Super Bowl 10. What does that tell you about these guys?
It means we love them that much more.
Yeah,
I still
doubt.
love all those guys, and it was really cool, man. It really was.
Honestly, George, what I would say to you, because I thank you for doing this, is let's pick a Cowboy win next time. I bet you that would really be fun.
Just a couple of years later, something really good happens in January.
That's what I'm saying.
Which this was my toughest moment as a sports fan. 2 years later is still to this day my best moment as a sports fan.
Look at that.
Super Bowl 12. So see, it can turn around. That's why we keep the positivity going, Bob.
That's right.
Something great can happen once again around here.
Yes.
It just seems like it's never going to again.
We'll stay on that wall, though.
We're going to stay on that wall.
Yep,
all right.
Until that
thanks
day.
to Peter Welton. He had some big time producing to do this week. It's always great to have Peter along with us for this ride. Thank you, Bob. This was fun. And hey, we got a Super Bowl matchup to talk about next week, and
that's right.
Maybe a new Cowboys defensive coordinator. Who knows?
We better
that's
keep
Bob
this
Sturm.
going.
I'm George Dunham, and we'll do this again on the Musers, the podcast, Cowboys edition, Football Friends.
Football.
Football.